Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Transmissions from the Outpost here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. It's October, which means it's time for some horror reviews. I went and checked out a film called Good Boy, directed by Ben Leonberg, written by Ben Leonberg and Alex Cannon. And this is a new horror film that I think Shudder is one of the distributors on this thing, but it actually got a theatrical release, which is kind of neat. So what is Good Boy? Well, first of all, I had no idea really what this was going into it. I had not seen a trailer. I didn't read anything about it. All I knew was the poster, which showed a dog and a lot of like creepy hands crawling out towards it. So I ostensibly knew it was something, a horror film involving a dog of some sort, but I didn't know what to expect going in. And so basically, the story here is a guy named Todd and his dog Indy decide to move into their grandpa's allegedly cursed old sort of like forest cabin. We find out very early on that Todd has some major health problems. You get his quote unquote sister, I guess not quote unquote, his actual sister calls him on the phone, sort of talking to him about these health issues, and whether or not it's a good idea to go up into the woods by himself. But he does anyway, and then creepy things ensue. The film is pretty much shot from the perspective of the dog Indy, so much so that you barely get any shots of the actual faces of the human characters in this. So Todd, whenever you do see him until like the very end, his face is always in shadow, or you kind of shoot from like the neck down. So you hear Todd talking to Indy throughout the course of the movie, but you don't really see him that much. So it's a very interesting sort of style in which they shot this. But what sort of happens here, and there will be spoilers, as there are in all these transmissions from the Outpost reviews, so be wary of that. But essentially, Indy starts noticing all kinds of weird stuff going on. You think it might be sort of ghost things, like doors are moving on their own, strange noises, and you kind of get the dog's perspective of like what is going on. So rather than like a human being haunted, and we get that perspective in movies all the time, this is what actually happens when man's best friend is experiencing this. And what happens, what does the dog think when the ghosts and monsters are milling about in these creepy cursed locations. um this is a really cool movie. Like, it's very quick. I think it's like an hour and 13 minutes or something like that. Do stay past the end credits, because there's a maybe about 5 6 minute sort of behind the scenes of how they made this movie, which after I watched that, it felt more impressive to me than when I was actually watching it. But basically, what this is this dog trying to, I guess, deal with and possibly protect his owner from these monsters, ghosts, whatever's happening in this old cabin. Larry Fessenden, the great Larry Fessenden, shows up as the grandpa, and we kind of find out that the grandpa, through some archival video footage from like a VHS tape, he was alone by himself up in this cabin, and he kind of went crazy. So it is nice to kind of see Larry Fessenden show up and act crazy for a few minutes here and there. Um, yeah, this is cool, man. This is a cool film. It doesn't do anything that sort of like revolutionizes anything, in terms of like, you know, what are the ghosts or monsters doing that we haven't seen a million times. It just sort of recontextualizes it in from a dog's perspective. The actual dog actor, Indy, very good in this. And when I first was watching this, I was like, dang, man, this dog is a great kind of like movie actor. There are animals that are trained to be specifically to be in the movies. But when you get through the end credits of this and you actually see the director, Ben Leonberg, and I think his wife, Alex Cannon, they shot this entire movie over 4 years in their house. So it's literally them with their dog who's untrained, trying to get shot after shot and get the correct shots on all of this. And so it was just very, very cool to see how this was actually made, and I'm glad that that little stinger was put after the end credits showing all of that. Um, yeah, yeah, this is a cool movie. I think if I had any complaints about the movie, and I think that this was probably something as a dog owner, the director probably was like, I don't want to put my dog in this kind of frame of mind. I was a little taken aback by how Indy never really seems to get angry. I mean, there's a couple moments where they kind of show him barking here and there, but it's not like an angry bark or a growl or anything. Um, you would think that Indy would, I don't know, go harder in terms of trying to protect his owner in this. He sees a lot of stuff. You get to see Indy's, shocked face and everything when the monsters are milling about. But I was looking for that moment when the dog sort of starts snarling and trying to protect the owner from the creepy crawlies, and you don't really get that in this. Now, after sort of seeing the end credits, I understand that, okay, well, this was literally the director's dog, and he was just shooting this with his wife, like one slow shot at a time over 4 years. And you don't want to cause your dog who's untrained to start snarling and get pissed off. So I totally get it, but in the movie itself, it felt a little weird that the dog was a little too just curious about what was going on. At a certain point, you'd think that the dog would be like, all right, I got to protect my owner here. The other thing I did not really, I won't say I didn't like about the movie, but there's a whole issue here with the owner. He's got major health problems. I think it's kind of alluded, I don't think they actually state what his health problem is, but it's kind of alluded to cancer. He's got some sort of like, high stage cancer stuff going on. And the end of the movie, I when I first watched it, I was unclear of exactly what happened. So, just kind of spoiler alert here. You do kind of find out that Todd is dead at one point in time, and that he's kind of like a ghost. But there's this whole sequence when they're going underneath the house, and there's like this really creepy hole, and it's there, what the director's trying to say is that the that Indy is trying to save his owner from this kind of like death, right? This coming death of cancer. And it's like the movie's like a metaphor for that. I felt it got a little messy at the end in terms of like, well, what is the sequence of events here, and what is actually going on with this kind of like monster? Because there's like throughout the course of the film, there's kind of like, for lack of a better term, like a demon type character that looks very it's like black and oozy and gross. And my fiance actually brought this up after we were out of the movie, because I didn't think of it at the time. She's like, "Oh, that's like the representation of cancer, like this black cancerous." Thing that is coming for the owner, which I didn't catch when I was first watching it, which totally might be the case for sure. But the ending got a little messy in terms of how what was going on, how was it all playing out, and sequentially, like what was going on. So I was a little confused by that. But the good far outweighs the bad here. Like, just the shot selection is cool. The location is cool. I liked the choice to not really show the human characters at all and keep the perspective on Indy, the dog. I thought that a lot of the stuff they did with the dog was very, very cool in terms of putting the dog in kind of like these very creepy, scary locations and situations, and the dog's reaction seems very, very genuine. Now when you watch after the credits, there's a really funny sequence when they're like, well, so you see this really creepy thing we did with the movie here, where it's all dark and you project onto Indy's face that he's really, really terrified, and then they show the behind the scenes of them actually shooting that shot, and they're just making goofy sounds of the dog and stuff to try to get the dog to do what they want and look the way they want on film, in with the lights are on and everything like that. So it is very cool, and it's an interesting exercise on how we as a viewer, an audience member, kind of projects our own sort of feelings on like the animal, and kind of put ourselves in the place of that animal. So yeah, and it's like I said, it's quick. It doesn't wear out its welcome. Indy is really cool. It's a cute dog. Everyone's gonna love this dog, and I think the I saw that the director intentionally said before the movie came out, look, the dog doesn't die. So it's not a spoiler. The dog does not die. The director said that up front because he didn't want people to not watch this because they were scared that the dog might die. The decision that the dog makes at the very end, I thought was really great. Um, it has a really cool kind of like final couple, 30 seconds in which the dog obviously does not want to leave its owner, and we kind of see what happened with Larry Fessenden's dog, and Indy, chooses the other way. So yeah, Good Boy. This is a cool movie. If you have a chance to go see this in the theater, definitely go see it. It was only showing a couple times on like one screen at my local theater, but if it's there, go check it out. Support this filmmaker. It's pretty cool. Amazing accomplishment what he and his wife were able to do, shooting this movie essentially by themselves for 4 years. Very, very cool story. And if it doesn't show up in your local cinema, it looks like Shudder is distributing it, so I'm sure it'll be on Shudder at some point this year. So, Good Boy. I'm going to go ahead and rate this a solid B. Definitely worth a look, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Transmissions from the Outpost.